news in the Idaho legislature. Now here are Paul, Jay, and Chris on 670 KBOI.
Paul Jay continues his vacation in Arizona. He will be back on Tuesday as he's watching baseball. Joining us this morning in the Next Title studio, Janie Ward-Engelking from District 18. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine.
Good. How are things? Before we start asking you questions, I'm always curious as to how you think things are going in the legislature this year so far.
Well, I think we have to delineate between the Senate side and the House side. On the Senate side, I think, things have been going pretty well, and we've been moving through the agenda and doing our work, and I don't think that's exactly true on the House side. I think they've had a lot of bumps in the road.
And a few fights.
Major fights. Battles, I guess.
What is the best thing the Senate, in your opinion, has done this term so far?
Well, I think we've been very collegial and have done a lot of collaboration on some issues, and certainly on education funding and some work with colleges and universities. So feel good about that right now.
Obviously, the election was rather contentious on a national scale. Are you happy? Does it make you at least feel better about the future that it seems like Democrats and Republicans in Idaho seem to be working together to better Idaho, as opposed to maybe on the national scale where it seems like nobody can get along with anybody?
I think that's always been the case here in Idaho, that we've worked well together, and there are issues we can come together on and that we care deeply about, and we can move those forward. So that's always been the case. And actually, I think there's been a little more division between the Republican Party, between the right and the moderate. And so Democrats have been real players this year. They've needed us.
In education, there's a task force now that's trying to figure out exactly what does Idaho want, especially in higher education. What does Idaho need to do in terms of colleges and beyond in the near future?
Well, actually, we're meeting today. The task force will have their second meeting, the higher ed task force, and I am on that task force. But and I don't think we have a plan forward yet, but we're certainly looking at a lot of issues. And funding continues to be an issue. We've cut funding for the colleges and universities drastically here in Idaho. And one of the things we hear over and over again that's deterrent for students to go on is that it costs too much, that they just don't have the money, the financial backing to do that. So it certainly has to be part of the conversation. But we can also look at ways to incentivize students to enter jobs or at least careers where there is a great need in Idaho. More internships, probably, more partnerships with business, but that's yet to be decided. We're just kind of in the initial planning stage.
Some states have looked at making community college free. Has Idaho ever moved toward that?
It was part of the discussion. We brainstormed probably about 150 ideas or thoughts, and that was certainly brought up. So it will be on the table to discuss, and I don't know exactly what our plan forward is going to be.
On the other end of the education spectrum would be pre-K, and Idaho is one of about, 6 states that don't fund pre-K, I guess now. Has there been any movement toward that?
The data is so clear on that. We know it's basically the best bang for our buck. We know that it works, and that if we would invest in pre-K, we would see great returns on that money. However, there's no political will right now to do that. We've got a few pilot programs going, partnerships with cities and businesses that are putting together a plan, and so we'll have real Idaho data. But it's just a heavy lift over there. There's people that think we should not be in the business of providing that.
I can still remember, how much of a fight there was just to get kindergarten funded.
And it's still not mandatory. Right. Kindergarten, it's really kind of appalling. It's not mandatory in the state of Idaho, and it's half day. It's only funded for half day. So, yeah, we really have to begin to take a look at providing affordable daycare and preschool for children, especially those in need. It doesn't have to be mandatory, but it certainly has to be available.
To piggyback on the mandatory, the past week or so, a couple of weeks, mandatory minimum drug sentencing has been a big topic here on the station. Is that going to go anywhere? Is it flat?
Well,
Does it have hope for the last week or so?
I still have hope. You can't be a Democrat in Idaho if you don't have hope. So I have hope because, we need to really take a look at that. It should be left up to the judges, and they should look at every individual case, because we have people serving sentences that nonviolent drug offense, and they're actually spending more time in prison than somebody for murder, and that's just not right. And we can do better, and I'm hoping it will advance, but it's getting late in the session. I think we'll be out of here next Friday, unless we get held hostage. You never know.
Janie Ward-Engelking from District 18 is our guest on Minority Friday. Time to check traffic. 150 people that came out to partake in that.
Yeah, I think there were probably more than that. I think probably more like 600
nice
plus. And it's Representative Rebel, and she's in the same district I am. And this is something that we've been very concerned about. And she took the lead on that this year, tried to get a hearing in her committee, and wasn't allowed to do that. But the chairman said, but you can put one on your own. And so she's been working on that, and we had some contentious debate over the science standards in education committee. So some of those experts that we'd brought in to testify, or that came in to testify, made themselves available for this hearing, and it was very powerful, I think.
There were there was some motion yesterday in the legislature about taxes. Now, tell me, we still have a sales tax, but do we not have one on groceries anymore? Is that what's going on?
Well, if this bill were to go through the House now, the House has to concur. What happened, and it's an interesting process, but Mike Moyle's tax cut bill was sent to the amending order. And what was done is we took a new bill, and they call it radiator cap, because basically what's left of that original bill or car is the radiator cap, and we put a new bill on top of it. And so the new bill says that we would exempt sales tax on groceries, but the type of groceries that are used for SNAP. So wouldn't include everything, but the basic groceries that people need to buy. And so that's basically what's there now, and it will proceed to the House, and I don't know what will happen there. It was an interesting process, and the Democrats sided with that, and so because of that, we were able to get that done, and it was very interesting.
What was the original intended outcome of Moyle's bill?
Well, it was to give a tax cut to corporations, and also to give a percentage of the income tax cut, not only to corporations, but to the wealthiest Idahoans. It was going to be amended to maybe give that same tax cut to all Idahoans. But when you look at a 10%, a 0.1% tax cut, and you're not making very much, you get $20.
Right.
And somebody else who's making a lot more money gets it. So it wasn't really what we thought would be fair. We thought if we're going to do a tax cut, which I'm not totally sure we have the money to do it this year, we've provided $52 million for emergency relief from the flooding. We still have roads to take care of. We have we're on the third year of the career ladder for education. We have a fourth and a fifth year. So we've got bills coming up that have to be paid, and certainly transportation's weighing heavy on all of us because we know we've got to do something there. So I'm not convinced necessarily we have the money, but if we in fact do have the money and we're going to have a tax cut, let's make sure it works for everybody, every Idahoan.
I'll lead you right into the transportation. We had the Republicans in yesterday, and that's high on their list also. Obviously, the winter that we had this year exposed a lot of transportation issues with roads and bridges and everything. Where does that sit?
Well, we've got to do something, and, we should have done more 2 years ago when we addressed this issue. We put a Band-Aid on it then instead of really addressing it, and so now we're back again to deal with it. I mean, if you've driven the road from Meridian to Caldwell, you know that it's terrible. And when you have to close a freeway because of potholes, you know you've got serious issues in this state. And we've got to find the mechanism to continue to fund that, because we aren't even right now. We're not even currently funding maintenance.
If the legislature finishes in the next week, or even maybe 2 weeks, if you get held up an extra week, what? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, you've got 1 week to go. What do you think will be different in medical insurance, in health insurance in Idaho than at this time last year?
Well, I'm disappointed. Yesterday, Marianne Jordan made an effort to amend the current bill that's coming through that would address the people in the gap, but we're really talking about a very few people that it would address. It put together a little pilot program, but and they're going to use the Millennium Fund money, or that's their plan, which that Millennium Fund money was originally meant to help people quit smoking and get off substances and do something for that group of people. But instead, taking that money and trying to put together a pilot program for some of the people in the gap, we could leverage that $10 million and expand Medicaid and get $90 million from the federal government, leveraging that $10 million, and we could cover the entire group of this uninsured population here in Idaho, and it would be about $143 million savings to the state of Idaho, and then also a savings to the counties and for the CAP fund and the indigent fund. But we weren't able to get that done. So at best, what we might get is a small pilot program that will address some of the most seriously ill, some primary health, certainly not any catastrophic coverage. So we're still going to need the CAP fund. We're still going to need the indigent fund. We're still going to be picking up the bill for many of those people that have to go to the emergency room because they have no other option. So
probably we're in a situation now, and I think most everyone would agree that it's smarter for people to keep wellness as part of the healthcare than it is to deal with the situation after the fact.
Yeah, and that's what we're not providing for these people, where they don't have that option. They can't go to a doctor, so what they have to do is wait till they're seriously ill or it's an emergency and they go to the emergency room.
Senator, we thank you for your time this morning on KBOI. That's all the time we have.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming in. Hope you're not held hostage. I hope you get out of here next Friday. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Thank you.
It's 8:50.